Hi everyone, welcome back to our reread. It is I and Claire. I don't know where I was going with that sentence. This week we are discussing all the way from Sansa 1 to Jaime 2 in A Storm of Swords. And Claire has reminded me that I do need to set up a playlist for these books. So I will do that this week, I promise. And next week we will read and discuss all the way from Tyrion 2 to Arya 3. So we have 2 Arya chapters next week. But this week we have Sansa, Jon, Dany, and Bran for the first time. So
yes.
Yeah, so Claire, starting with chapter 6, Sansa 1.
So we've got, just to group the chapters together, we've got Sansa meets Marjorie, Jon meets Mance, Dany meets Jorah's lips.
Oh, so gross.
Summer meets No Tail. Davos meets Edric Storm, and he also meets the dungeons. And Jaime meets his match with Brienne.
Nice.
And he also confronts these haunting nightmares that he has. So that's kind of what's running through these chapters.
Yeah, and I was just saying to Claire before we started, I think this might be one of my favorite groups that we've ever done. I really, really, really got into it this week. Really got into these chapters. And I think this is definitely the earliest Sansa chapter we've had. And I think I was really excited about that we're meeting Sansa so early in the book. And this is such a great chapter. She does meet Marjorie for the first time, and of course we meet Olenna for the first time.
Yeah.
So that's like the biggest thing here. Hi Sunny, hi AU. Thanks for being with us again. And so let's jump into Sansa 1. For me, there was a lot of fruit and floral like imagery and symbolism in this chapter. And I feel like this chapter, because you have Marjorie and Sansa in this, and Olenna to a certain extent, but mainly Marjorie and Sansa, there's a lot of like imagery and symbolism to do with fertility. And it just made me think, are the seeds of the next generation somewhere between these two women? Forget what happens in the TV show, but just in the book, somewhere between Marjorie and Sansa, do we have, like, there was so much in it. Will the next generation come from this?
That's a possibility, definitely, in the books. Yeah, I mean, it's so confusing when you think about people like Marjorie, Queen of Thorns, when you know what's happened from a TV show point of view. But I completely agree, you know, and we get the old age of heroes and the kind of ancestors of the house, and you've got Garth Greenhands, and it's all very much about fertility. Absolutely, yeah. And all the kind of fruit and the pomegranates, that's like seeds, and yeah, definitely.
And Lady Olenna, like, she's such a great character, and she comes across on the TV show because she's played by, what's her name again, from
Diana Rigg.
Diana Rigg, yes. What was the TV show she was in?
She was in oh my god, The Avengers.
The Avengers,
yes.
She comes across, because she carries such this ladylike presence. I feel like that isn't really in the Olenna that we meet in the book. Like, she is a beast. Like, she's really cutthroat and very mean.
Yes.
But again, the way she talks about her son, he comes across as being really arrogant and prideful and ambitious in a way that he doesn't in the show as well. So the Tyrells, they're way more, I think in the show they're quite vain, I guess, in the show, and a little bit peacockish, but they're definitely way more ambitious in the books. That I feel like it doesn't come across in the show. And maybe even with the exception of Marjorie might be, she's the most ambitious in the show, but she might be the least ambitious in the book, actually.
They range, don't they, from like supremely manipulative, like quite clever in their ambitions, through to quite grubby and grasping kind of ambitions, through I always think of Lord Tyrell that way, you know, and again, Olenna describing him as an oaf, and the men, you know, it's all about the men. All the men are fools. Her husband, this mystery Targaryen that she was supposed to marry, her son. It's like, you know, she's very much a matriarch. And it's funny because I'm listening to the audio version, and in the books, the way that she's described by Raider Trees and the way that he does a voice and everything, like a tiny little old lady with like crazy white frizzy hair that's just like, meh, that just sits in the corner kind of crowing at everyone. But I did very clever the way they, you know, the use of, she knows exactly what's going on, what kind of a nest of vipers in King's Landing, and the Red Keep and the walls have ears, and making sure that the fools and the Butterbumps are kind of, you know, and his magic tricks and everything are kind of distracting away from the noise. Because I don't think you really get that in the get that in the show, do you? You just get them having tea on the veranda.
And she comes across even a little bit, I'm going to say this because she comes across Irish, but she comes across a little common compared to other ladies in this book. And the reason I say that, not because she comes across Irish, I don't want to offend my fellow Irish people, but it's the way she speaks.
Straightforward.
Like and she says like that, you know, people sitting on their arse, and then she talks about the Tyrell claim to High Garden is dodgy, and it's like the language she uses is it's quite like it's not what you'd expect from somebody who's highborn, you know.
Dodgy at best.
And she comes across as being very open but incredibly unforgiving. So if anything happens to any one of the Tyrells, we'd have to expect Olenna to do something pretty monumental in revenge.
Well, it's interesting that. Well, I mean, what do you think? What do you think Olenna wants? I've got in my notes here. I've got the notes that I've got for Olenna is interesting that she mentions Hoster Tully dying, because she is of that generation. I mean, she's older actually than that generation, but she would have known, and she does seem to know quite a bit actually about. You get the impression that certain people she knows about that she's never met, and then there are other people that actually she seems to know quite well. And I get the impression that she seemed to know Hoster Tully, or at least she knew whatever his plans were, whatever, you know, she would be able to interpret. If it was her sat there instead of Cat with Hoster on his deathbed, she'd know exactly what it was that he was talking about.
Yes.
She also I think that she wants the Tyrells to have the crown, but I don't think she wants to do it. And she's clearly wasn't happy with the whole Renly situation. Renly had no real claim. She wasn't, you know, she was just following what a stupid son said had to be done, and now we're here. And it's like, no, there's more to it. There's clearly more to it than this, and we know what happens. And certainly in the TV show, in a final moment, it's kind of like, right, okay, so this is you know, this is what was going on with her. But like, I think she does want the crown, but I think she wants it through like legitimate ways.
I think she wants Marjorie to have it.
Yes, yeah, she wants her family.
Important. I think it has to be the woman. Like, she doesn't speak very highly of her son. Loras, Loras is their, you know, he's their white knight or whatever. But I think it's really important for her that Marjorie is up there. Like, she wants, it's very clear Marjorie is her favorite.
Yeah.
And just when you're saying that she's like one of the old generation, she's right now going into wins. She's the only one left, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, to have been around through all of the monumental things that that have been alluded to in this series, and to be cut out as such an intelligent woman, would make you very bitter. And so to see her daughter, her granddaughter, who's equally intelligent, because she's not like that with her daughter-in-law. She thinks she's a bit of an idiot. But,
do you think her husband did fall off a cliff? I mean, that just really, It
I don't
seemed
know.
really kind of like one of those things that you're expected to just go, oh, as a reader, oh, she was married to an oaf. She keeps talking about men are fools and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other. And it's just that, like, he was looking this way and then just fell off a cliff. And it's like, I wonder.
Yeah. Is she originally a Tyrell? Like, is she a cousin, or I didn't look up to see what she originally was.
I can't
If
remember
anyone in the
who.
comments knows, that would be
I
great.
think she's from a family that's from the Reach, or she might
Right.
be. Is she a red wine?
Okay.
She could have been a red wine.
Yeah, no, it's I definitely think it's about Marjorie, because how much do you think they would have been aware of Renly's intentions to have Marjorie replace Cersei when Robert was alive? Do you think they were actively like a party to that plan?
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
and I think that idea would have been fed to Renly via Loras from the Tyrells.
So it like for her, like, if I think if she could have found a way to do the same with Stannis, she would have, like, try and get because she knows that Renly's claim was really, like, it was really dodgy. So I think she wants the throne for Marjorie.
Yes.
But I also think she wants the North. They want the whole thing. Like, they want to get Winterfell through Sansa. And I found it interesting that they offer Sansa Willis, and who was crippled by Oberyn Martell. So her potential husband, crippled by Oberyn Martell, and her actual future husband will be defended by Oberyn Martell. So that's kind of a nice connection there for her. What did you think about Sansa's thoughts on the Hound and Loras in this? Because
well, just going back to Sansa, because it is Sansa's chapter, it's very easy, isn't it, to focus on Olenna and Marjorie. But I think there's a constant awareness here with Sansa. She's obviously really impatient to just get out of King's Landing, and she still seems to have this half a thought of Dontos being her the knight in shining armor. But she's still, I kind of feel sorry for Sansa, because she's having all of her childhood ideations of what it is to be a knight. Just everything about her childhood fantasies is just being completely destabilized. But every now and again, she still holds on to these notions of somebody's going to swoop in and save her. And then it's like she gives herself a reality check, and it is like a big slap in the face, like when she realizes that Loras has absolutely no recollection of giving her that rose at the tourney. And for her, she had sleepless nights over what that could have meant and how amazing he was and the touch of his skin and all that, that obsessive teenage girl kind of thing. And it was just a huge slap in the face of like, oh my God, he doesn't even remember that happening. And it's funny because sometimes I just thought that's kind of a parallel in a way to us as readers, in that sometimes there's a rose at a tourney here, and it's kind of like we sort of, Loras is struggling to remember when Sansa talks about how important it is to her. He sort of dismisses it and kind of go, oh yeah, I can barely remember that. And it just seems to mirror how we as readers sometimes struggle with the details of, like, because we haven't been given all the details of what happened with that. But one was a blue rose and one was a red rose. These roses that were given at the tourneys for, like, Queen of Love and Beauty or whatever. But she's clearly, I mean, she says in this chapter that she kind of thinks about how much she's learned to mistrust. That's a new skill of hers now. She mistrusts, and how and when to mistrust. And she's learned all of that, how to do that in King's Landing. And she's also acutely aware of her current situation, which she isn't Sansa Stark anymore. She's a traitor's daughter and a rebel's sister, and she's kind of like she actually really, by the end of this chapter, should be breathing a sigh of relief that somebody like Olenna has swooped in and said, we can marry you to
Yeah.
you know, our son, because it's like, you know, she's at this point, it's quite, you know, Sansa could be cast aside, because in the eyes of the crown, at least, she is a traitor. And it's kind of like, you know, how important is Sansa and Sansa's claim to the North right now?
Well, just two things when you're talking there about the tourney. It does make me wonder, because it's Littlefinger who says about, is it is Littlefinger in the books anyway, I hope, that says that when Rhaegar crowns Lyanna the Queen of Beauty or whatever it is, that all the smiles die, or was that Barristan?
That was Barristan
Right.
telling Daenerys, I think. Yeah, that was the day that all the smiles died.
Yeah, because it does make me wonder. I mean, it's different for Sansa, because obviously Loras is married to her and Rhaegar was married. But it does make me wonder, how big a deal was that for everybody else at the tourney? Is that like coming from Barristan and potentially Littlefinger later? I know in the show it's Littlefinger that says it. Like, how big a deal is it for everybody else in the crowd that don't intimately know these people?
You're right. It could have just been the teller of the story that's like dramatically kind of like the day that all the smiles died, and it's like, no, for you, maybe for you, but actually nobody else really
Barristan
even
so
was
looked up to
interested.
Rhaegar as well.
Yeah,
and he knows what that could mean. But just there as well, what you're saying about Sansa needing somebody to come in and rescue her, I think it's very important for her by the end of this chapter that it is like Olenna as a woman and Marjorie, that it's women coming in, because they're going to teach her a valuable lesson that like that doesn't have to be a man to rescue you all the time, that you can do this for yourself. And that Olenna's methods might not be the right methods, but I wonder, because I think Olenna is kind of living vicariously through Marjorie, and if something happens to Marjorie and she doesn't get to fulfill her plan through Marjorie, will she then support Sansa in seeing Sansa take power later somewhere in the story, or underestimate the intelligence in Sansa, that the intelligence that she saw in Marjorie that is actually also in Sansa, and maybe even more so? That I hope,
is she a true
Olenna
feminist?
Supports her later if she needs it, because I think Olenna could be a very valuable ally, especially because Olenna is going to be the reason that Sansa's going to have to go on the run, basically.
Yeah.
So there's the other thing that I think that Sansa, for the first time in a long time, the Tyrells give Sansa, it's not just that they're rescuing her, they're also giving her a shot at some dignity, and maybe even more importantly, giving her a shot at having family again. You know, Willis sounds like a nice guy, and Marjorie's very honest. You know, she's like, you'll come to love him. He's a really sweet man. You know, he's not Loras, but you know, come on.
Yeah,
he's not gonna beat you.
He's not Joffrey. Yeah,
not Joffrey.
It's interesting that Olenna obviously knows about Joffrey when she refers to, oh, that'll be his Lannister blood, you know, and it's like she clearly knows that he's a product of incest and that he's, you know, he's Lannister through and through.
Maybe here we go. Here's tinfoil for you. Maybe Olenna is like what's God, say it for me. Rains of Castamere. The Rains. Maybe she's a secret Rain.
Ooh.
Because maybe they have it in for the Lannisters. I'm only joking. That's not possible, but it would be fun. If
it would be. I'm sure there's going to be a secret Rain that pops up somewhere and just like ends up just completely ending the Lannisters.
I'd love that.
It'd probably be somebody who Tyrion kind of ends up falling in love with or whatever, but
it would mean Tyrion would have to get destroyed, wouldn't it? Yeah. It's the other thing that surprised me in this chapter, because I don't think we've seen it before, is it looks like Sansa's also haunted by the death of the butcher's boy.
Yes.
Which I don't know if she's mentioned that before. Has she? I don't remember her mentioning that.
But she does. She links it to Lady, doesn't she? And that's why she has this big void in her life now.
But it's interesting that she shares that with Arya. But there's like, because it also shows that Sansa isn't this elitist, selfish, highborn girl who thinks that, you know, if there's a problem beneath her, it's beneath her. Like it,
Yeah.
I think it does show empathy there, which is for me always growing in Sansa, and she's one of the most vilified characters in the book, and I really don't see why because she's growing up.
Yeah.
And I know George laments the fact that she's a hated character as well. I like Sansa. I think she, compared from her chapters in Game of Thrones, you can definitely see the change in voice, you know, with Sansa. So, but yeah.
So a couple of things to note from this chapter is that the small folk obviously are falling over themselves in love with Marjorie. That Lady Merryweather was mentioned in this chapter, the Myrish beauty. Now, I'd completely forgotten. I remembered that she comes up in the books later on in her friendship relationship with Cersei, but I'd forgotten that she was originally attached to this little clucking hen of Tyrell's. I'd completely forgotten about that. But yeah, she was a spy originally, wasn't she, for Olenna? And the other thing was, I just wondered if you had anything at all about the song that Butterbumps was singing, "The Bear and the Maiden Fair." Was that like a subtext throughout this chapter?
Yeah, going from I always associated with say for me Jaime and Brienne for some reason, but I don't know what it has to do with this chapter.
But she does think about the Hound in this chapter, and she kind of thinks to herself that she doesn't know why she thinks about him, but she doesn't know why she thinks about him.
I do think it's interesting going into the Jon chapter with Mance talking about songs. And I do have a question about that. So maybe, I should have thought about that a bit more, because definitely the Bear and the Maiden Fair is also in the Dany chapter. So
yes.
When we get to our Weinstein moment with Jorah. But yeah, why? What do you think it is?
I just thought it just reminded me of Sansa and the Hound. I can't remember all of the lyrics in it now, but it just felt like it was a kind of subtext to how Sansa might be feeling that was like translated through this song. But who knows? Who knows?
It's interesting when we get into Jon's chapter, actually. Maybe one of my favorite chapters ever.
Well, let's move on to it then, because I think we're finished with Sansa. So Jon, one thing that I just when I was listening to this, I looked and I was like, it was like a good minute and a half into listening to this chapter. It took me a while to realise that Jon was actually now with the wildlings and that he wasn't at the Fist of the First Men. I was kind of a bit disorientated about where Jon was, and it was like I'd completely forgotten about all that stuff with Corrine. Because this is the first Jon chapter in this book, isn't it?
Yep.
So yeah, it did. It took me a while to kind of like figure out where I was with Jon.
Can I just say, Mance, we heard about Mance way back in Bran 1. Actually, did we hear about him in the prologue of Game of Thrones? Definitely maybe in the prologue.
Yeah,
actually.
I think we did. Yeah,
we did. On the first page of the prologue, actually.
Yeah.
He didn't disappoint.
No.
Mance doesn't disappoint.
No.
He's one of the few characters that when you meet him after 3 books into the 3rd book, he is a great character. Yeah. I love his character. And in the show he's played by one of my favorite actors as well. So love him. So and there's so much, like, even now there's so much mystery surrounding the people that Mance is with. So I know you're definitely going to want to talk about Mance and Val and all that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Well, more, to be honest with you, this chapter to me, and meeting Mance, kind of, there's nothing that confirms it, but to me it just feels really obvious that Mance is a Stark bastard. That's who he is.
I think there's definitely Mance is definitely not who we think he is, because there's
No.
stuff about cloaks with Mance, and
Yes.
like there's a lot of stuff about disguising. But let's go back to the start of this chapter, where, because it is Jon's chapter. This is like Sansa's chapter. You get sidetracked talking about Tyrells, but with Jon, he arrives with all these wildlings, and like he's blown away by the wildling culture, I think, and I think
Yes.
I am too. As soon as I get into it, it's so fascinating. But he was watching them make all these arrows, and he thinks, oh, they're making them for, they're making them for the Northmen. And I was thinking, I was like, he's thinking they're making them to shoot the Northmen, but actually, in reality, they're going to be defending those Northmen. So those arrowheads are actually going to be in defense of them. And I really liked the way George worded that at the beginning. And instantly I felt Mance, George doesn't waste much time in introducing him. But instantly I felt like Mance is very amiable and charming towards Jon.
Yeah.
And do you think that's potential starkness? Like,
I think it's a kind of almost brotherly camaraderie, but I also think that they both lie to each other about why they became oath breakers. And Sunny actually is saying in the comments here, any thoughts on Mance's cloak having red threads from a shy? That I do remember about Mance's cloak, and as I was listening to it, it's like, oh, here it's coming up about the red cloth that's woven into his cloak. But the way that he spins this yarn, this romantic story about the threads coming from a boat from a shy and the wildling woman, and how they nursed him back to health and all this kind of, it's like, there's something in there that's been, maybe there's a shred of truth that's been massively beefed up. And again, flip that over, and that's exactly what was going on in Jon had to come up with an excuse that was credible enough for Mance to not kill him. And the best that he could come up with was, oh, poor me, I'm a bastard. Look at how horrible it is. It is.
Like, the best lies are truths.
It is, And isn't it funny that that's the one thing that made Mance go, okay, yeah, we're cool. It's, don't worry about it.
And also, he'd seen him. Like, he'd met Jon twice before.
Yes.
So he probably knew there was truth in it.
Mance seems to have a link to Winterfell, which to me underpins his potential status as a Stark bastard. And he also talks about the wildling blood, his first men, the same blood that flows in the veins of the Starks. And I think that that's the same blood that flows through the veins of Mance as well, is the blood of the first men and the blood of the Starks. I don't know what this means and why I think this or whatever, but I know that lots and lots of people have said, oh, man, Mance is glamoured and Mance is this and Mance is that. I think he is who he is, but I think his origins are that he's massively linked to the Starks, and there's still this thing that I'm trying to get my head around, which is there's old power, old magic, and then there's the First Men's magic, and they seem to be kind of almost intertwined to the point where people don't remember what the difference between them is. And then that kind of comes up with what Jojen is saying later on in Bran's chapter, where he says that the First Men and their friends, the children of the forest, and it's like, but were they friends? Yeah. But just going back to Mance, though, I think it's very interesting that Mance knows Jon, knows who he is, remembers that incident in finite detail when he first came across him and Rob as boys in the yard at Winterfell. He's I think it's more than just a passing interest in what's happening with the king in the south, what's happening with Robert Baratheon. It's what's happening at Winterfell that because he's been somehow excluded from it. He's been pushed out at some point, whether he was a baby or whatever. I think he knows that he's a Stark bastard.
I think, yeah, and I think you're right that
he has an affinity to Jon for that reason, not because he's
Yeah.
Jon's father, not because he's Rhaegar or anything like that. I think it's I think they're both Stark bastards.
and you remember the people that remind you of yourself. Like, and I think that's why he remembers Jon, because as he said, there is a kindred spirit there. They don't know who they are. And we're given evidence to suggest who they might be. AU says Mance gives off the air that he may not be a wildling, that he may feel he is not a wildling. And Mance, do you mean Garren? Yeah, or the popular one is Mance's Rhaegar, right? That's another popular one. I don't think so. I think Mance is a Stark. I think Mance is Bael the Bard. I don't. He says he was inspired by Bael the Bard, but we talked before about, and this is what made me think about when you were asked about the Bear and the Maiden Fair. If there are forces at work that are maybe making history repeat itself, or that are purposefully passing down myths and legends through either song or story, then Mance's tale of Bael the Bard and the idea that, you know, he snuck into Winterfell and all that kind of thing, and his bastard takes over Winterfell. That, I mean, the story might have changed. It might not be that he gave birth to the bastard of Winterfell. He may bring home the bastard of Winterfell. That might be Jon, or it might have something to do with the child he's going to have. But there's definitely, I don't know, they talk so much about it. And also Jon says that Mance likes the sound of his own voice. That it made me think, is there more? And he does say he was inspired by the song, but it made me wonder, it's sometimes hard, and we may never get an answer. It's hard to say whether things are history repeating themselves, or whether there have been old stories are stories of things that had to happen. Like, we've talked about that before. Is Bran sending forward stories of things that have to happen and inspiring the people who need to do these things with the story of what they need to do, if you know what I mean? That was a very convoluted way of saying it.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. AU thinks that Mance is Arthur Dane.
Okay.
Well, Arthur Dane is mentioned as well in these chapters, isn't he? He's in the next chapter, funnily enough, in Dany's chapter. Whitebeard / what's he called? Barristan, mentions that he was like best buddies with Rhaegar. Is Mance, I'm having a blind spot here. Is Mance blonde?
I don't think so. I don't know, actually.
I'm sure he was described by when Jon walks into the tent and kind of describes everybody in the tent. And there's a singer in the corner that's singing The Dornishman's Wife.
Well, I will get an answer to you for you.
It's funny as well, in the song The Dornishman's Wife, the lyrics, part of the lyrics are "All men must die," which is and it's kind of, I don't know, we feel an affinity, I think, with Mance because of that. You know, he feels sad. There's a kind of distant respect there that the half hand died, and he's obviously he can kind of recognize who's loyal and not loyal. So he talks about Tormund being loyal. And he is. Tormund's one of the most loyal characters, I think. But yeah, I think he's somebody more than we are given to believe as readers, but whether or not he's like some dead character resurrected or glamoured or whatever, I don't know. I just feel that he's got a very, very, very strong affinity to Winterfell specifically. It's almost like he can't stop going to visit it and find out what's going on. And he seems to have taken a distinct interest in Jon. And I think that's because Jon's another Stark bastard who eventually will, as all other Stark bastards, in my theory, have been punted off to the wall.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's something to that for sure.
Mm.
Annoyingly, he has grey hair.
Okay.
So yeah. So, but there is a blonde young woman. So
Yeah.
there are blondes up around the Wildling cause. So so he Arthur Dane has no grave. AU says. I mean, it's possible, but I do like his story about why he joined the Wildling cause and the elk, the story about the elk and the cloak, and it just made me think like when he takes off his cloak, his crow cloak, and puts on this new kind of cloak from the Wildling for the Wildlings. It's almost like he's wedding himself to the Wildling cause,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's going to be very difficult for Mance to break away from that.
They brought him back practically from the brink of death, didn't they?
Yeah.
He was shredded, not just his cloak, but he was shredded as well.
And there's not like they instantly they take John in. I mean, it's not like because they're free men, they've nothing to lose. They've no oaths, they've no vows. They take people at face value, I think. And there's danger in that, but there's also like John will be very torn, and he will be torn between the two worlds because they're not bad people, not all of them anyway, but like they're not. If they trust you, why can't we trust them, kind of thing. I think that's what Mance is getting. Just as Mance was talking about wildcats and elk, it made me think we don't actually see a huge amount of wildlife in the north at this time. And it made me wonder, are they moving south, or are they being have they been whited? Have they been taken? Are they in hibernation? Where are all of these animals that were presumably abundant at one time, but now they're not they're not really around as much. We hear about them. I mean, the direwolves came from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So it just, I wonder, in a future northern battle, will the whites have a massive amount of wildlife, a whited wildlife that they'll be using?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that. I mean, I'm just thinking that they've been eaten, they've been hunted down and eaten by the camp, because it just kind of linking back to what you were saying before about learning about the wildling culture through John's eyes, and it's interesting that we're seeing that this is a group of people where it's absolutely fine for anybody to speak up and have a voice and actually challenge each other, which is quite refreshing for us to see in the books as readers. But to John, it's almost terrifying that there's this, wow, this is how they can speak to each other. But he also kind of has this feeling that being that free is also quite dangerous. And then, I mean, he's talking about numbers and, a well-organized small group of warriors can defeat like a huge host like this because they're not organized. But to me, they didn't seem that disorganized. They were cooking, they were setting up the camp. I know that they had like, wild feral kids running around and things like that. But I don't know. I think they've been underestimated. I think actually they're a little bit more organized than the men of the Night's Watch would like to believe that they are.
I mean, it could be that hunger is driving them south as well, because nomadic tribes and like so-called uncivilized tribes, if you like in the Americas, they did almost hunt animals to extinction. They've like recent history or recent historical evidence is showing that. So it is possible that they've hunted these animals to extinction, but I don't think that's the case, because even Chet, like that was part of the problem with the prologue. They couldn't get food, and so there's something. I feel like there's something going on with the animals north of the wall. It's the reason why the direwolves were were potentially, I know that it's the three-eyed raven sent the direwolves, whatever, but there's other reasons why the wolves and stuff are getting organized, especially when we get into Bran's chapter. But yeah, I don't know. I think there might be something there. But AU says that the Danes loved Ned, that he was sent to the wall to be near Jon. Howland couldn't kill Arthur Dane, and Reed negotiated with him. Howland Reed negotiated with him, and he says, "Sorry, I'll stop. You don't have to stop, AU." I do like the idea that Arthur Dane is alive. I do like the idea that he's alive. I mean, I don't really mind with Mance who he is, but I feel like Dane is going to be somewhere else, maybe potentially.
Well, the Danes are one of the biggest houses that we know the least about. A lot of it is based on hearsay, and I completely agree. Yeah, the Danes love Ned, and we get that through Eddard Dane and his conversations with Arya. But I think the Danes love Ned for a different reason, though. I think that Ned had a bigger, longer relationship with Ashara Dane than we're led to believe. So
I think it may be closer to the TV reveal. I think Howland did something dishonorable. What Ned and what most people would consider dishonorable. I think I think he does stab Arthur Dane in the back. I don't whatever he does, because there's frequent references to it, right? The Walders constantly reference the fact that, the Crannog men don't fight with honor, or there's something poisonous about them. They're
sneaky. Yeah.
And I don't think Howland Reed is going to be this virtuous pillar of honor
running through with the sword.
No. I think when we meet him, he may come across as a bit more sneaky. And I don't know if his kids are representative of what he is going to be. So I think the truth there is going to be a lot dirtier, and that's one of the reasons why Ned feels so ashamed of that day. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. You could be totally right, though, AU. I mean, let's face it.
There's so many. One of the things that I hadn't realised upon this reread, and it's fascinating because I'm thinking, is it just because we're looking at these 6 chapters a week, and so we're naturally grouping them together and seeing different threads between each chapters? But to me, there really seems to be a lot more of that. Like this chapter, it's a big theme about this is breaking your oath from the Night's Watch.
Absolutely.
Being an oath breaker. And then in the next chapter, and in Dany's chapter, we've got about the Knight's oaths, and then in Jaime's chapter, you've got the Knight's oaths. It's all about breaking your oath, and why wouldn't you keep that oath, and why was it so difficult to keep it, and why would you break it, and all this. It's like the theme of the week.
Even Sansa, she breaks her silence. She breaks an oath that she made to the Lannisters, and Davos, of course, the biggest oath breaker of all. But no, you're totally right. I think it's clear that there's obviously an order. He's got. This is why the books take so long. And from this group of chapters, it just reminds me why. It's just such a reminder as to why Storm of Swords is typically everybody's favorite in the series. I think mine is probably Feast, maybe. But definitely Storm is probably. It definitely is up there in the top 3 for me, anyway. The other thing I liked about this chapter is that Mance offers Jon like a new cloak. He's basically saying you don't have to be a bastard and you don't have to be a crow. You can be whatever you want to be. That's what wildling is. It's be whatever you want to be. And I really and that's tempting. That's very tempting for Jon, So
it's a little bit like the offer that Salador Saan gives to Davos about just, you can be free, go and visit your wife, get away from all this shit, I can actually set you up and you can be quite rich, you know, and come and work for me. And Davos is tempted by it for a couple of seconds, you know.
That could be actually, it could be another theme for all of these chapters, that idea of like, you get to choose what you get to choose what type of life you want to live. You get to choose the type of freedom you have, you know, because even Jaime kind of alludes to that with Brienne, and Jojen is kind of saying that to Bran as well, although Bran wants to go into the summer route. But yeah, it is.
But they give him a choice.
Yeah.
You know, they are. It's like, well, you could have this, or here's a choice, or why don't you do? You know, it seems to be happening throughout these chapters. Epic introduction to Mance into the series, I think.
So good, so good. Yeah. And anything on Val or this baby that he's waiting for to come, and Dala and all that kind of thing?
No, not yet. I think for me that comes a bit later on, when much later actually in Feast, when Sam and Gilly actually have the baby with them.
It did make me wonder though, when he because Mance spends a lot, like he does give us great detail as to how he gets to Winterfell faster than Robert gets to Winterfell, and that one man can travel faster, and he has money and stuff with him, or like, and he has a lot of money with him because he's able to buy his way into kind of the sellsword pack. And it does make me wonder, will we see a similar type of journey again in this series? So yeah, I really love Mance. I think he's a great character. God, a Mance POV would be amazing. All right, actually a Mance prologue or something would be cool. All right, so then we're on to Dany 1. And again, another great introduction into the Dany storyline. It's already like creepy. This is like the hashtag Me Too all over it. By the end of this very creepy chapter. I have so much on this chapter. I'm going to let you start because, I'm going to try and narrow down my notes.
We start with her explanation of her name, Stormborn, and why she loves the sea. And I thought that was quite interesting, because I do think that there could be a possibility. I'm not convinced, but I think there could be a possibility that that's not the reason she's called Stormborn. I think she's called Stormborn quite simply because she was born at Storm's End, and there is a huge possibility, and again, this is MP's theory, that she was smuggled in. That was the life that was smuggled in to Storm's End during the siege. But we've got a kind of breakdown of where she's at. So this chapter, this was one where I was kind of doing other stuff, so I was kind of half listening, to be honest with you. But I think, from what I can gather, it looked like it was full steam ahead to Westeros, and then she had basically Jorah got her to change her mind on that. The dragons, she thinks about the dragons being her own children and being possibly her only children. They're getting quite big now. They're like the size of dogs. When she talks to Jorah about the dragons, actually, and Jorah tells her about tales of dragons plucking krakens from the sea, and she thinks, wow, that would be amazing to see that. And that, again, just makes me think, as a reader, it would be epic to see that, actually. I agree, Daenerys. Will we ever see this? Yeah.
I definitely think Victorian might be.
Yeah. Sorry, the kettle's boiling here. I'm just going to turn
the kettle is about to get boiled here as well for me. I can see my darling husband. What I loved about this chapter is that it's a really happy start for Dany, and which is unusual in this series, to have such a happy start to a chapter.
She reflects that it's like the happiest she can remember in a long time.
Yeah, and also like this great love of sailing that she has, like this great love of the sea, which may also tie in with what you're saying about her being smuggled from an early age. This might be something, this might be something that the soothing waves might have something to do with where her life started out, in either theory, a very conflicted view of the series, I feel. And I think this is a very realistic thing as well. it's something we see with Tyrion and the Lannisters in general later on as well. But in most families, you know, it's more realistic that you have this love-hate relationship. I think not with anyone in my family, in case you're watching. I love you all dearly. Then we get some dragon facts in this.
Yes.
So dragons can't be caged. They are killing all the rats on the ship, which I thought was interesting. So I thought, is that symbolic maybe of then when they do arrive in Westeros eventually, what rats might they have to take out? Will that be like, you know, whether it's whites or whatever? And the crew take pride in that they have dragons on board that are getting rid of all these rats, and that's a huge problem. Like down through the centuries, a huge problem is rats on ships. Like the disease they carry, they eat the food. So the fact that they have dragons on board actually makes them quite a formidable crew, a formidable vessel on the ship. So I think that's interesting. Will there come a point? If Dany ever gets to take over Westeros, will there be pride restored in having dragons on that continent again? Dragons prefer to attack from above, and we also learn that Drogon is always hungry and he's the first to kill, which I wondered, is there some oh, hello. Thank you. I'm getting a cup of coffee as well. We are well taken care of, aren't we? Spoiled. Thanks, son. Yeah, it's just interesting stuff about dragons there.
Did Barristan say that with freedom, dragons can live forever?
Oh, I think
like there's a possibility that they can live forever.
I mean, the eggs can.
Yeah, the Targaryen dragons were bred particularly to be like in battle dragons. But if they are magical creatures that can potentially live forever, given the right circumstances, i.e. freedom, that sounds to me a little bit like the werewolves. You know, they can live forever given the right conditions and the right circumstances.
And they're very intelligent. So what? I mean, if somebody wargs a dragon, what will they learn? Like, it's not going to be like warging any other kind of animal. Like, will there be some sort of like intelligence there or some sort of way of seeing the world that will be important for? I don't know. Ion, hi Ion, asks, Dany will find what's beyond Lonely Island instead of Arya. I think I like the idea. Dany is essentially homeless, and I think I like the idea that she will never find a single home, and that won't be a bad thing for her. Like I like the idea that she may end up traveling. I think that might be okay for Dany. The Balerion, the ship is kind of the Balerion is the ship that they're on, right? And it kind of gets lost in this calm.
Yeah.
And as Jorah is talking to Dany and Barristan throughout this chapter, it kind of made me feel like for the next book and a bit, Dany is kind of going to be lost in this calm, like this calm before the storm.
Yeah.
The storm, not quite knowing should she stay where she is or start moving west. Should she go? Like there's lots of lots of trouble for Dany when she's not moving. When she stays in one place, it's not a good thing.
No,
and I feel like the ship is a metaphor for that.
Yeah, it's you're right actually, because she gets, well, there's the Myronese knot, but she does get tied into knots, doesn't she, when she stays in one place for too long.
And Barristan, they talk a lot about Rhaegar and Arthur Dayne.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I am amazed. I can't figure this out, you know. I don't know whether Jorah knows who he is and he's just pretending he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Or, you know, it's just, it's so obvious because, I mean, in my notes earlier on in the chapter, I'm like, why hasn't Jorah figured this out? Why hasn't Jorah? Clearly, Whitebeard is very knowledgeable about what's happening in King's Landing, real details that only somebody like Barristan would know. It's obvious. Come on, Jorah.
Also, he's the most famous knight on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Jaime is second. Like
Yeah.
Barristan is number one. Like every child knows who Barristan Selmy is.
And
Like
we'll
it
know.
wouldn't
I mean,
take.
they'll have been at tourneys and things like that where
He would have seen him,
they
surely.
would have run into each other, or he would have at least seen him from afar, I'm sure.
Especially when he says, Barristan says, no one ever really knew Rhaegar. Like, how does Stuart ever have that kind of insight into a person?
I can't. I mean, he does. Jorah does talk about. He talks about the three things that he's concerned about: Whitebeard, Belwas, and Illyrio. I mean, you know, at least one of those three you certainly should be concerned about.
Well, he should be concerned about all of them because he is a secret.
Yes. But he doesn't. So he quite obviously says he doesn't trust them, but yet he still doesn't seem to have figured out who Whitebeard is, which I just find astounding.
Yeah, I just wrote down, does Jorah know who Barristan is on a subconscious level?
Yeah.
But I forgot that. Well, sorry, just before we move on from Barristan, when he says that nobody really knew Rhaegar, I am not somebody that buys into the Mance's Rhaegar theory, but you can see how coming off of the Mance chapter into that, you can see how people do kind of come to the conclusion, not just based on this, but how like there is a little bit of kind of signposting to that. Maybe
it's funny because throughout this reread, I'm listening to and making it. Oh right, yeah, that's where that theory comes from. I can see why people think that. All right, okay, that means. But so I can see it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I buy into it.
No, totally. I'm the same.
Yeah.
So the bulk of this chapter then is Jorah advising Dany and then getting really turned on by himself being successful at that. But anyway, we'll get to that.
I think there is a subconscious thing slightly here coming from Dany in that it's like, oh, her clothes keep slipping off several times during this chapter. It's like you know, not that I'm saying, you know, she was asking for it or anything horrific like that, but I just think there is something subconscious there where maybe she's pushing boundaries a little bit. And certainly when he starts kissing her, she's kissing him back and doesn't quite realize why she's doing it. She's you know, I can kind of understand where she's coming from in a way.
And there is a thing with Targaryens, like they seem to be highly sexualized, like they're very sexual beings.
Yeah.
And like as the series progresses, we're going to get that from Dany. She is kind of, you know, like she does kind of I think she does.
She's a hoe.
Not that she's gagging for it, but you know, yeah. I don't like, and she's still young, but I do. I hate when people underestimate a young girl's sexuality just because she's young. That sounds really gross when you say it out loud like that. But she's 16. She's able to have sex in this world, okay?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's very different. Like when boys are kind of 16 and they're up for it, oh, that's okay. But when a girl is 16 and up for it, that's kind of weird. And I mean, you know, girls go through puberty as well. She's already been pregnant, and she will. And I do agree with you. There is. I forgot about the slipping of the dress and all that kind of thing. There is. I don't think she's necessarily asking Jorah for anything, but she does enjoy the kissing, which is weird, but it's still creepy. But anyway, I forgot that Jorah was the one who came up with the idea to go get the Unsullied.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
I completely forgot that.
Yeah.
And the thing
he's had slavers connections as well in the past.
Yes. The other thing I forgot about was the conflict, the historical age-old conflict between the Dothraki and the Unsullied.
Yeah.
And I wonder, will that be a problem later on when she's trying to bring these forces together or keep them together?
Maybe.
Because the Unsullied carry braids of Dothraki hair on their spears. Is that still the case going into Winds? Do they still do that? Like, I don't know if I don't remember.
I don't know. She seems to have like a new and improved version of the Unsullied, doesn't she?
I assume she gets them to take that off. I don't remember. Maybe somebody else will But it is like that's quite a lot. Like
it's deep.
It's a big ask
Yeah.
to get them to work together.
Yeah.
I know she's given freedom to the Unsullied, but she's going to have to promise a lot to the Dothraki.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know, like, we assume she's going to get the Dothraki horde on her side going into Winds. But we don't know what she's promising them. And whatever she's promising them, it's going to have to be big.
But I don't know how. I think the Khalasar that she's left with, this kind of dwindling, lots of like older people and women and children, are much more compliant than, for example, Drogon's Khalasar would be.
Yeah.
She's managed to get them on the sea for a start.
Yeah.
And they bow to power, however fearsome they are as warriors. Dothraki, ultimately, they will bow down to power. And I think this is what's going to happen in the books now when we move into Winds of Winter, is that where she is at the moment, where she's kind of surrounded by the Dothraki, that they will bow to her because they'll see how big Drogon is. And I think they'll just see him as like this big winged horse that's power that brings her this power. And they will just go, okay, you're in charge.
And there will have to be a threat of starvation, I think, with the Dothraki. I think like ghost grass or something. There's going to be a massive threat against the Dothraki. It'll have to be there. And I also think Dany gets a lot of slack, and rightly so, justifiably so, I should say, because she's not very good at keeping things together politically and socially and culturally when she has power. And if she manages to keep Dothraki and Unsullied together, I think she can probably do anything. I think that, because this goes on for a long time, we got a very detailed story about the Unsullied and like how, all the Dothraki like go before them and cut their brain, like the humiliation of it. So I think if she keeps them together, it's a sign of what she's capable of doing. Long term in Westeros.
Well, it's almost like Dany's story is almost like a side plot, isn't it? Of like, you could call it could be its own little series of like how to be a queen.
House of Dragons, like House of Cards.
Yeah. But it is all her, and we get to find out throughout the books how she develops her sort of, leadership skills, her political nous, her relationships with her dragons and her advisors, and that's one of the key parts of Daenerys' story, I think, is we learn through her how to be a queen or how not to be a queen. This is, I don't know, I suppose the end of it for her will be, will she be a queen, won't she be a queen?
So I think with Dany, she's already a queen. Whether she'll be the Queen of Westeros or not, I'm not so sure. Also, AU says that it's kind of like Mance in a way. I guess the traveling idea with Dany. So, question: Jorah, good hand or just gives good hand?
I think I just don't like the fact that he presumes so much. And he, right at the very end of this chapter, he's kind of like presuming that, I'll be your husband. Remember, you need three heads of the dragon, which means a dragon rider. And it's like, really, does it? Well, hang on a minute. But also, he's just presuming, marry me, I'll be one of the three heads of the dragon. Nobody will ever. That's the worst thing, by the way, guys, that anyway, if any men out there are watching, I'm sure you'll agree with this, Kat. A man saying, no one will ever love you more than Ace, like, fuck off, jog on.
So insulting.
Not interested. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's beyond irritating.
Although, Claire, in fairness, I didn't get this offer from my husband that there was a potential for husbands plural. I didn't get that offer. Like Jorah makes that offer.
Yeah, there's a third one.
He doesn't mind if another husband is brought on board. What?
He's just so weird and
You're
creepy.
misogynistic and emasculating yourself within like a couple of sentences.
He's just horrendously creepy. And of course, he's got the brass neck to be talking about betrayals when he has betrayed her. I mean, this hasn't been revealed yet, you know, but he's like, you are really walking a fine line here, Jorah.
Do we hate him more in hindsight because of that? I do.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I definitely.
I mean, I do think he has genuine feelings for her, as fucked up and as creepy as that is. I think he genuinely has feelings for her, but just, oh my God, yeah, he's, yeah.
But it's it is a good idea.
The Bear and the Maiden Fair.
Yeah, yeah. It is a good idea to go get the Unsullied. It's not a bad idea. Like, it's not like, he is right. Like, Illyrio is, I mean, this is the first time anyone said it to her, really, right? That Illyrio is bad news.
Yes.
I don't think anyone has said it to her before.
Yes, yeah, he is. Yeah.
The fact that she's listening to him makes me wonder if maybe she should listen to herself. I think she probably knows that. She knows he smells weird. She knows there's something about him. But again, it's like everything with a woman in Dany's position. And I know, but like, if anyone's watched The Crown, you'll see this as well. Like even though she's the queen, she's the one who's in charge. When a man is near her and like tries to sexualize her, he will be very patronizing and condescending, and undermine her decision making. And we see that. I don't know if you watch The Crown.
No.
But that's definitely that comes up with Elizabeth and Philip a bit.
Right.
But she eventually owns it. But like we had that like with Victoria and Albert, like Queen Victoria, one of the most powerful female queens in all of history, and like basically let Albert go. Like, Albert kind of called a lot of the shots, and I feel like Jorah is expecting that with Dany. You know, she'll be the queen, but he'll get to tell her because she's only a little girl and she's beautiful, and he'll wrap her up in his arms. And I feel like if this was maybe, because it's Dany and she's not gonna fall for that shit. I think if it was someone like Sansa, Sansa's learning the hard way that you can't let men do that. Whereas Dany already kind of knows that from Viserys being kind of a shit. that I think she instinctively knows that men like Jorah need to be kept.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing this. He's completely overstepped his mark.
And if he wasn't giving her political advice, I think she probably maybe would sleep with him just to buff in her own way of using him. But because he is so he's so sure of himself when it comes to his political and military advice, I think she knows to keep him at an arm's length. She can't sleep with him and not have that become an issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, she could sleep with other men and it not become an issue, but because he thinks he's right all the time, that's a problem. And
been there, Claire. Yeah, John, a couple of times. Done some awkward conversations there. I remember when I was about 17 and I'd been on a night out and I was in a taxi going back to somewhere with this guy, and maybe I was a bit older actually, I was about 19. And he said to me, has anybody ever told you you've got the most beautiful eyes? And this is what I was like when I was 19. I just went, yeah. And he didn't know what to say next.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you're not the first one. Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm not the last, Claire.
Jorah's power play, yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
And he sexualizes it, and it's just weird. Even Drogo, I should say, didn't do that.
No, I completely agree, John. If it wasn't for Ian Glenn, nobody would like Jorah, because he's a bit of a repulsive character.
Ian Glenn is so fantastic.
The only
he's
thing
not
that
very
the only thing that makes me feel kind of sad about Jorah is Mormont, to be honest. But then again, this reread has just made me think that the old bear was a bit of an idiot as well.
He is a total idiot. Yeah, total idiot.
So
Like I
yeah.
really I have zero sympathy left for him now at this stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Dany. Good start, I think, for Dany as well. And already we like Jorah is going to get his comeuppance anyway, so
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So we're on to sorry.
Just one last thing. The magic number came up in this chapter. You know, that magic specific number.
Mm-hmm.
So very specifically wanting to buy 1,000 Unsullied so that she will have 1,000 swords behind her when she goes to see Illyrio. But again, yeah, this number of 1,000 pops up in the chapter.
Yeah, and I love how excited she is about that, actually. Because that's going to give her a power base as well, going to Illyrio. So then we move on to Bran 1, and bloody hell.
Yeah.
This is a great start. This is the most wolf chapter we've had. It's totally summer. Like it's like the consciousness that is completely summer at this stage, and it's brilliant. It's really, really good. And I kind of forgot how good this was. And Bran is hyper aware as summer. I should say it should be summer 1.
Yes.
Because most of this chapter is summer. But he's hyper aware of the sounds in nature, and he calls it a song. And it made me wonder, is Bran the ultimate bridge between the natural and supernatural? Like, is he the song of ice and fire? Is he the song of nature and the supernatural? I mean, I know
the Prince of the Green.
Yeah. It's so great, and so and even the way he talks about the man's word prince, like the way he refers to human language is it's really good. There's a reference to a kite in the sky. Is that right, or something in the sky? And I just wondered, is that a dragon or something, or is he thinking dragon more than what's he thinking of? I just
a kite is a hawk, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It's like a small. I think it's like a smaller version of a hawk.
So he also misses Lady a lot in this chapter.
Yeah.
And he says his sister left the wild, and it's finding it hard to make her way out of Man Rock. And it made me think of the crypts. And how the Starks kind of lock their spirits behind these crypts and the Man Rock and all that kind of thing. And is there something about taming the wildling that is in the Stark that isn't good? Is there something there?
I genuinely believe that we're given as the reader, the Starks are this like they're like the Brady Bunch, you know, and they're like our key protagonists and this wonderful family. They're always in it terrible that these awful things are happening to them. But I think what we've got is a spotlight on the current Stark family, and Ned's a nice guy from what we can tell of what we get to know of him in the first book. But there are hints already of these Kings of Winter and these this old power and this old magic. And to me, it feels like this is whenever we have the opening chapters with Bran, and there's been a couple of them now, and summer features, this one specifically has this real visceral feeling of Summer seems to have this, he feels presence and he feels absence, and it's almost like a different sensory perception. You know, we can see things, we can hear things, we can whatever. It's like there's this different level of perception or like scent or something that makes him feel, you know, that makes him reminisce about his pack. And also he feels the presence of this man sound in his head. So that's that kind of pull again from Bran, this awareness that and this link that he has with Bran. But there's also mention of there's this thing about dire wolves and then wolves, you know, like, and they're referred to as like their distant cousins, or that, you know, they're kind of like similar species, but they're like not the same. And it kind of feels like there's this thing. My notes make very little sense, but I've got dire wolf, old gods, old magic, and then you've, but it's also linked to this. It's almost, I'm trying to explain what I mean here. So the kings of winter and the stark wolves being the dire wolves, linked to the old gods and the old magic, and the normal ordinary wolves that seem to be kind of subservient to the dire wolves are like these like distant cousins. It's almost like the rest of humanity. So you've got the Starks that are kind of elevated into this special kings of winter status, that it almost feels like the direwolf feels that way when he looks at his cousins, these smaller versions of himself. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but I just think there's a link there between. I don't think that the Starks are as ambivalent as we think, and I think that this could manifest itself later on in Bran's story arc, and that maybe he does something like really. I mean, I already really resent the stuff that he does with Hodor.
Oh yeah, totally.
You know, and you could look at that and say, well, he's 9, he doesn't really know what he's doing, he's just testing his powers, he's being told one thing by Jojen, and then he has this feeling of, you know, he does his own thing when he's kind of goes off with Summer, but he's uncontrolled. It seems like he's got the potential of this massive power that's completely uncontrolled at the moment.
Although Hodor may have the last laugh, because I made note of the fact that Hodor is the only one strong enough to wake him. So if Hodor, for some reason, isn't around anymore, and Bran is alone and deeply in a warg-like state, I mean, he could starve. Like, he may never escape it. So, and that could be what happens. Like, he may end up in a weirwood network and never be able to escape. That might be the way it goes. But yeah, I like what you're saying there about the wolves, because there is a definite sense that, and this is what I was trying to get at with the dragons. If we ever see somebody warg a dragon, if Bran ever wargs a dragon, the idea of the other is a big thing in this book, and it's a big thing even in like our own like evolution. You know, that seeing not just like another species as other, but like another like tribe that lives down the road as other. You know, that idea that it's really important, or evolutionary speaking, there was a survival necessity to do that, and we still have remnants of that ourselves. But there definitely is something. There's obviously a reason why we have such extremes in terms of how certain parts of Westeros even see one another, or certain parts of certain races see one another, and even the way the Starks are presented, there seems to be something very other, even among the Northerners, about the Starks. Something very different about the Starks. So yeah, I think there's definitely something there with the wolves. I think Summer might be giving voice to that more than anything else. What is he? Oh yeah, he wants to be a wolf more than anything else. He says he kind of thinks nothing else is important. Like, he just wants to be the wolf, and it makes me think that if Arya got a taste of that in this to the same level as Bran did or does, Arya would never leave. Or maybe she wouldn't. Maybe because Arya maybe has more purpose as a human being than Bran does. Bran seems to lack purpose Even though Jojen says he's a prince and all that kind of thing. He seems to...
Yeah, he doesn't really know what to do at the moment, does he? And then he's given this choice, and he just says, he just thinks about his immediate situation, which is he can't walk, and I just want to fly, take me to the Crow.
Yeah.
Sonny asks here, any thoughts on Mira taking the sword of Bran's grandfather Rickard? So they took Rickard's sword, they took Hodor had a really ancient sword of one of the Brans, I think. Well, I can't remember who it was. And then there was 3, weren't there? They took 3 swords. I don't know if there's any particular significance of Mira taking the sword of Rickard. Clearly, the swords aren't usable. They're more of a symbolic thing. So there's supposed to be something, isn't there, about the swords locking in the spirits that are inside the tombstones, and that if you remove that, then you kind of, you releasing the spirit. I don't know if there's any. I'm sure there is, but I can't think right now if there's any specific symbolic reason why that particular crypt sword was taken specifically by Mira. I don't know. What do you think, Sonny Frank?
I don't know, but I wonder what releasing the spirit means. Does that mean that the way that spirit behaved in life, that's going to be replicated through whoever releases them? Like, will Mira sacrifice herself for others in the way Rickard did, potentially? I don't know.
Maybe. For a family.
Yeah. So Bran talks about how the Walders would make fun of Jojen and Mira, saying that they are what they eat. Like, you are what you eat. Like, so they eat frogs, so they're frogs. And it made me wonder about the Bran and the dragons and how they really lust after meat. Like, they really, really, like, Bran has a really unquenchable thirst for meat and blood in particular, like fresh meat.
A flesh-eating monster.
Yeah. So if you are what you eat, like, they are kind of blood magic. Do you know that kind of way? Like, that seems to be. He thinks about it quite a lot, and even in Clash, he thought about it a bit more. AU says, please, no men of Dunharrow. And Sunny says, I think Rickard must be very angry spirit because he was burned and will get revenge, but against who? Yeah, I don't know. I hope Mira does something badass. That's what I hope. Jojen tells Bran that I think it's. I didn't write it down. Actually, I think it's Jojen says that the truth that hides beneath the world.
Yes. That's hugely significant, I think. Looking through the eyes of the weirwood and seeing what the truth is that lies beneath the world. There's a whole load of. I mean, what's the phrase? As so above, same as below, or whatever. But it seems like there's you could do an entire new series on just what's going on underneath, underground, with the tunnels and the weirwoods and what's happening underneath.
Even in our own world, that's true.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, they're discovering things about trees now that are incredible.
Yeah,
like that the roots under the ground act like they kind of make similar patterns to the way the brain stems act in our own brains. Like, they're very intricate and complex, and they communicate with one another. So it's totally. And Jojen also says to Bran that he'll be the winged wolf.
Yes,
he'll be the winged wolf. So,
and that was the whole reason that Jojen came to Winterfell, to free the winged wolf.
Yeah.
What is Jojen's purpose here? He seems to be quite, it's like, we're here to help you, but I can only help you so far. I mean, do you think that Bloodraven is giving Jojen these green dreams in order for Jojen to then have this purpose?
I do, and I think it has, I think Howland Reed may have had little or nothing to do with those kids ended up at Winterfell. Because Jojen says that they've sworn Bran their faith. Now, when you say you swear somebody your loyalty, your allegiance, your sword, but your faith is something different. Like that's religious.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's
a promise, it's a vow, it's an oath. Maybe he's keeping some kind of oath.
If anything, I wonder, did Howland try and convince Jojen to stay and he wouldn't? So Howland kind of sent Mira with Jojen to kind of keep him safe or something. Or I don't know, something doesn't quite fit there, because it's definitely something wacky going on with these kids. And it's almost cult-like the way they talk. Because Jojen seems to know a little bit more than he's saying.
So much. So he's. Oh, sorry.
No. She's just saying that the little the Crannog runaways. Yeah.
So he also says another significant thing, as well as what lies beneath the world, which we're all fascinated to know, and how what the werewolf. I mean, we get a little bit of this, don't we, at the end of Dance, where Bran is kind of spinning through time and through the eyes of the weirwood trees, but this whole what is going on beneath the world, like underground, as well as that, we get this significant phrase of from Jojen: so much is forgotten and so much we never knew. So that completely links to, well, a number of things, but the first thought that jumped into my head is the North remembers, and it's like you've probably forgotten what it is or never knew what it was that you're supposed to remember. And I think this links to what Jojen's trying to do here. So some sort of an agreement, pact, oath, promise, whatever, I think that's the reason. But again, there seems to be something about why or how Jojen is getting these green dreams, because they're actually quite specific, almost like it's been directed.
Yeah, but
somebody's given him this.
As AU says, hi Victoria.
Hi.
As AU says, it seems like they're taking him away from Winterfell. Like Jojen had that dream that the sea was coming to take Winterfell or whatever it was. Like, I mean, he has very specific ideas about what Bran needs to do. I find it really hard to believe that his dream about the sea coming to Winterfell was really that cryptic, and like I feel like he could have figured that out and warned Bran, but it seems to, like AU, maybe perhaps I'm just putting ideas in your idea, AU, but I feel like it suited them for Theon to take Winterfell, because then they could convince Bran to leave. Do you know what I mean? Like if he had been very open about that, what that dream meant, and
and like Sonny says there, if the Reeds are taking Bran away from Winterfell, knowing that there must always be a Stark in Winterfell, then they must know what the consequences would be if there isn't a Stark in Winterfell. It's I can't figure it. I mean, it's the bit where in this chapter Bran thinks about, he kind of is very descriptive, describing Jojen and describing Mira. Mira's 16, Jojen's 14, and he thinks about how just the demeanor and their physical appearance, and that Jojen is described as old Nan describes him as the little grandfather. And it just made me laugh, because it's like, okay, that's where I can see where the theory comes from, that Jojen isn't Jojen, he's actually Howland Reed. And it's
oh, I haven't heard this theory. Have I heard this theory?
I'm sure you have. Yeah.
And maybe I just blocked it out.
But yeah, we remember that. So there's something about the Crannog men that knows something about this. Maybe the North remembers. Maybe the Crannog men really do remember. Or at least,
yeah.
as Jojen is saying, he could be just genuinely being honest and saying, we remember what the first men and their friends told us, but there's also quite a lot that's forgot. We know, but you've all forgotten about it. And this is what we need to do.
Well, I mean, the idea that there must be a Stark at Winterfell, there must always be a Stark at Winterfell. We don't know why.
Yeah.
There may be something that will be unleashed if there isn't, and maybe it's in the Reed's interest to unleash that. You know, some people do kind of, you know, think if like the dragon eggs, you know, if you hatch a dragon egg, sure it's good for Dany, but it's not great for anybody who isn't in Dany's circle. Like you don't want to meet a dragon on a dark night or any day. Like we don't know what's going to be unleashed from Winterfell. So, and the Crannog men are always shit upon by everybody else. So you know, and they're able to disappear. So maybe they think they can protect themselves from whatever happens. In Winterfell.
There's just as I mean, I'm going way off the point here, but maybe it does kind of link. There do seem to be several houses in Westeros that have some sort of a link to Winterfell and the Starks around some kind of oath or promise. So you've got the Manderleys, who refer to this promise that can never be, you know, we will never be able to fulfill, or something like that. This promise that there's some sort of promise around the Manderleys and the Starks.
And Bran does think about the Manderleys in this chapter.
Yeah, I can kind of almost imagine Howland Reed sending off his children, his only offspring. And it's almost like that, you know, this is going to be a massive mission for you. It's the purpose of your entire existence. And we have to do this because of this promise, this oath, this whatever. And when they arrive and pledge their allegiance at Winterfell, it's this strange oath that's made on ice and fire and wood and earth and kind of all this sort of, it sounds very First Men, Children of the Forest. So yeah, I'd love to know more about why Jojen and Mira are there, but I just can't quite figure it out right now.
And again, it may be something that, well, I hope we get answers to. But anyway,
maybe we won't.
I don't know when we meet Howland. I don't know how honest Howland will be either. I know we're supposed to meet him, but
he does seem to know he seems to know an awful lot about wargs and screen dreams and skin changing, because he's doing this thing where he's trying to ground Bran all the time, isn't he? He seems to be doing this thing where he's asking him to do tasks, as some are like marking the trees, and you know, and Bran just keeps forgetting to do these things. And I think the reason that Jojen's asking him to do it is it's some kind of grounding thing where it's like, you know, stay focused, don't stay in your wolf too long. So he's giving him as much information as he can in this is how much I know, but it's almost like, you know, this is like beginner's class. You now need to, you know, you need to go to the next stage, because I'm not going to be able to help you with that. But this is my purpose in the story.
yeah, I would say,
I mean, for Howland to potentially sacrifice his children to fulfill this, or you know, this promise that he's obliged to, that we may not know about, whether it's a promise to Ned or whether it's some kind of ancient promise between House Reed and House Stark, I don't know.
It may have nothing to do with the Starks.
It might not. Yeah.
And I have this sense, like, people talk about, you know, Howland Reed as if he's going to be like Ned 2.0, you know, he's going to be this nice guy, he's going to be honorable. I don't know, you get this very positive impression of Howland Reed from people. They think he's going to be some sort of white knight coming in. But let's not forget, Ned's best friend was Robert Baratheon. A colossal arsehole.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't expect Howland. I think we should be wary of the kind of guy we'll get with Howland Reed. That's just because, and again, we don't know what's motivating Jojen and Mira here, because we don't know really what's motivating the three-eyed raven either. So there's a lot in the air about what's happening here. But yeah, so that's it for Bran, right? When we so then we're finally into our second chapters for Davos and Jaime. I think we only have one new chapter 1 character. We have Samwell 1 coming up. But other than that, I think everybody's off to. I think everybody has started at this stage.
When do we start having Brienne chapters?
Feast, I think.
Really? Wow.
I believe it's Feast. I could be wrong. I think it's Feast. Because she's with Jaime for most of Storm. So, Ian says, "Oh my God, Howland is accountable then. Maybe they eat frogs, so who knows?" All right, so we have Davos too. I have so little on this chapter. The thing that stood out to me about this chapter is when he says he wants to take out Mel's still beating heart when he's killing her. Like it's pretty, like he really hates her, and I just as you were talking about religion, it is interesting that we go from somebody who's very cult-like in his religious fervor with Jojen and into Davos, who's just had this renewed religious kind of faith. And I think Saldor San is right. I think he shouldn't be going anywhere near.
I know, but actually, Salador San is probably the worst person that he could have run into, because he's already thinking that effing bitch has wiped out my family, and he's also thinking about her wanting power and what her motivations are going to be. So he's already she is the prime target for his grief, for his horror about everything that's happened. And then he bumps into Salador San, who then starts telling him, "Oh yeah, Stannis is in a bad way, and he won't see anyone at all apart from the Red Witch." And it's like, oh my God, that's the worst thing you could have said to Davos, because that's kind of amped up his vengeance from, like, you know, it's just kind of giving it a turbo boost.
Sonny says that Salador tells Davos that Stannis has been going underground at Dragonstone. What has Stannis found? Nothing that has cheered him up, that's for sure. I mean, he's probably seen Dragonglass, but you know, it doesn't seem to it doesn't seem it won't have registered the importance of that. Maybe later it will, but not right now.
I mean, we get whether or not this links to the TV show, I don't know, whether they just went off on their own tangent at this point, but there is that bit in the TV show where they seem to be mining dragon glass from dragons. So there's like that huge cave of like, oh wow, right, okay, there's this untapped wealth of dragon glass that we need in the north to fight the others. So
I think it's pretty, like, it's not a massive stretch though to kind of get to that point that there would be dragon glass there, right? But I did find it interesting that I think it's a huge mistake for Davos, because he's in a terrible condition health wise. It's clear when he shows up that pretty much Saldor San has kind of ratted on him, right? By the end of the chapter.
Yeah, he betrays him.
Yeah. Potentially for his own good though.
Yeah.
And I feel like that line that Saldor San says, you know, I'm gonna have to bring news of your death to your wife. Like, I'm gonna be the one that's gonna sail up there. And it is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You know, that like Davos is standing in front of him having lost 4 sons, and he just will not let go of it, and now he's going to lose the only man in the world he can really trust, because he turns up when he's talking to Saldor about who potentially they've burned. He's like, "Oh, I knew they'd burn those people. I knew, and he didn't even have to tell me. I knew they'd burn those people." It's like he's already realized the worst, because it's not Mel that he's really angry at, it's Davos, or it's Stannis. Like it's Stannis that's disappointed him.
Yeah.
Mel and I want him to admit that before Stannis goes too far, but I'm afraid he won't. Sonny says that maybe Stannis found dragon eggs. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that would be good. Saldor tells Davos that Melisandre is singing while she's burning people. Sounds like Miri. Yeah.
Yeah, it's this R'hllor, like, I think, you know, blood magic as well is involved in this, and there's this some sort of, because I even thought, why is Salladhor Saan so adamant that Davos shouldn't carry out his threats to kill Mel? Is he doing this really for genuine friendship, or is there something else there? Maybe Salladhor Saan is, you know, a big believer in the Red God that we haven't, you know, and he just doesn't want him to kill a priest of a priestess of R'hllor. But I don't know.
I kind of feel though that like they kind of have a similar bond to maybe Jaime and Brienne right now. Like if Brienne was going to do something stupid that was going to get them all like killed, I think even at this stage Jaime would go, as much as he wants to get away from her, he'd go, that's going to get killed, love. You know,
I can kind of understand where Davos is coming from here, though. With he's right. He should have died. He should never have survived that. A ship should never have come out of the blue to save him. He shouldn't be alive, apart from all the grief and, you know, regret of roping his sons into all of this. So you're right. He has had some kind of like religious experience with the mother, that he feels that he's being given life in that moment, whether he was like died and reborn or resurrected or whatever. I mean, he even thinks himself about Patchface when he thinks, hang on a minute, I was drowned and then I survived. And it kind of reminds him of Patchface, and he starts thinking, am I just going mad like Patchface? And funnily enough, we do run into that creepy motherfucker in this chapter.
I am.
But
Edric.
Yes, yeah. I think that he feels that he was resurrected and given his life back for a purpose, and that's the first thing he latches onto, is my purpose is to kill that bitch and get her away from my king. And but again, I think it is more of a, rather than it just being Davos who does this, it's almost like he's taken on this renewed religious mantle where it's kind of like my faith against your faith.
Well, I do think Saldor Saan is really trying to save his life. I mean, maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but I do think he even says to him, "Where are your fingers? You've lost your luck. Like you're sick. You've lost your luck. It's heavily guarded. Stannis is not in a good headspace. I'm going to be going to your wife to tell her you're dead. Like that's what I'm going to have to do because nobody else is going to do it for you. Listen to me."
Well, in terms of plot progression, then that's exactly what should have happened. You know, it's amping up the sense of danger for Davos. And also that kind of, you know, if you're going to do this, think about it. What about, here are the consequences? So we have to know that as the reader, which is why we have this. But I agree. I'd like to think that Salladhor Saan is a friend, and actually is just doing this for Davos's benefit.
Yeah, I do think though as well that like we do have to know that, obviously, for plot progression, whatever. But also I think it's just to show how irrational with grief and anger and vengeance Davos is right now, and it'll show the journey Davos will go on.
Yeah.
Because he could very easily go a Stoneheart route, right? But he's not going to do that.
No.
And he'll be saved from doing that because there are people around him that do give a damn about him. And that isn't going to be the case with Kat, for instance.
Yeah.
Everybody would pretty much betray her. So I just kind of, I think as well, it kind of shows us that even the lowest of the low, even when you think they're betraying you, there potentially is a trust or respect or love there.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case with Saldor Saan.
Yeah.
And even if you look at the Dany chapter with Jorah, as much of a creep as he is, And as treacherous as he was, he does have, in his own weird way, he has Dany's best interests at heart. He does want her to be queen. So it is just like feeding into the nuance of the people around those characters as well, and how much they influence their direction. And the best thing for Davos is that he gets locked up, because he gets to recover, he gets to learn more. But I feel like Davos, as we go into Winds, isn't or hasn't been fully honest with himself about his true loyalty to Stannis at this stage. Like going into Winds, not right now, but and I think you're right. I think there's definitely another reason why he's sacrificed his sons for Stannis. There has to be. It can't be just that, you know, he made me a knight and he cut off my fingers. And I mean, Edric even questions it. He's like, my dad wouldn't have done that.
Yeah. But Davos says, I was knighted for the onions, but I lost my fingers for the smuggling. And my question would be, are you talking about the act of smuggling, or what you smuggled, which was that important, severe, whatever, that there had to be some sort of consequence or sacrifice to that? So yeah, thanks for the onions. We'll knight you for that, but there's going to have to be some sort of consequence for you not just because I don't think he would do that just for the act of smuggling. It's what was smuggled. I think there was more than just onions.
But like Davos says to Edric, well, he only took the top of them. And Edric said, why didn't you take the tongue? Like, it seems a bit pointless. Like, it doesn't... Like, even as a punishment, it just seems... Like, it's almost like they decided, okay, well, everybody knows what kind of upstanding man I am. I don't really want to punish you, but I'll make it look like I have. Do you know that kind of way? Like, you'll still be able to use your finger. You'll still be able to use your hands.
Just talking about fingertips, can I show you my multi-chrome nail polish?
I was noticing it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so it's really purple, nice. But then it goes, boom, it goes green.
Who's that from?
It's Pop Polish.
Ah.
Yeah, and it's called Slickest of Them All. It's like an oil slick one. Sorry about that, non-polished people. Yeah. But I was just thinking about fingertips and like, oh my God, that's like,
Poor Davos can't do manicuring on that hand anyway. And it's just on one hand, right?
Yeah.
It just seems a bit, I don't know, there's something, I think you're right, there's something else to that story, because Davos's sense of loyalty is just, it's above and beyond what it should be. And Edric is right to question it, like from, like, you know, out of the mouths of babes, you know, like, he's like, why would you do that? Like, you saved their lives. Like, why would they do that? So yeah, I'm not sure. Hashtag fewer. Yes, hashtag fewer. So yeah, that's all I got from Davos too. I didn't get much else.
Patch face, creepy patch face. Fool's blood, king's blood, blood on the maiden's thigh, chains for the guests and chains for the bridegroom. That's the... Well, I mean, on the face of it, that looks like an obvious pointer to the Red Wedding, especially that it's the bridegroom and the guests. And yeah, fool's blood is what's he called? The phrase fool. I can't remember.
Jangles. No, what's his name? Is it Jingles? No.
Is it Jingle Bell?
I don't know.
Jingle Bell or Jingle, yeah. Fool's blood, king's blood, blood on the maiden's thigh. Yeah, well, there's all sorts of like weird, what do you call it? Foreshadowing for the Red Wedding. But it's just the fact that Davos mentions earlier in the chapter this whole I should be dead, I was reborn. Oh, kind of similar to Patchface, and then he runs into Patchface. Yeah, he's one of the creepiest characters, and the fact that he spends all that time around Shireen as well.
Yeah, and can I recommend for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, Alt Shift X, who's got one of the most amazing ways of presenting videos. Uh, his editing is amazing, but he has a great video that came out last week on Patchface.
Oh, right,
Really,
okay.
really good video on Patchface. So
Right.
that's Alt
I'll
Shift
check that
X.
out. Yeah.
Jingle Bells.
Yes, it was Jingle Bells. Yeah.
So that's it for Davos then. Davos is locked up, and
Yes.
we go from one prisoner to another prisoner. Jaime, whew, maybe my favorite chapter of the week.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
this chapter. Love. I know AU loves this chapter. I bet this is a favorite for AU. Am I right, AU? It's just such a great, great, great chapter. So it's all, we start off at the kneeling man inn, right? So that's a lot of the action takes place at this.
And Brienne asks, "Is this a special place? Is it a special place?" I think there are locations that are magical, and this is the place where the last old king of winter bent the knee. And yeah, I think Jaime Targaryen. That there is a special significance about this place, definitely.
Yeah,
Interesting. Again, we get this general feeling. But it's almost like press bulletins that come through from the small folk from time to time, just saying this is the feeling of what, of the nation at the moment. And they don't give a shit about lions or wolves or who. They're no, are you a lion, a wolf, a fish, or what? What are you? But effectively, you're all the same to us. You murder us for no reason. You do. It doesn't make a difference. You're a lion or a wolf. It's the same thing.
Well, I guess, who can we get away with murdering? I mean, we probably shouldn't murder lions, but fish and wolves, that's fine. The king will forgive that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that's probably what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Whereas little do they know that if they kill these guys, they're in big trouble, and on all sides.
So a couple of things that are referenced in this. This actually in this chapter, it's a bit random, but it's the second time that the flux has been mentioned. It was also mentioned by Davos, thinking, "Oh my God, I've just been resurrected from the dead. What, to die from the flux?" And then it's mentioned here as well in this chapter, which isn't a surprise because of the state of Westeros at the moment. There's just battles everywhere. They're being told, the King's Road is dangerous. Don't go this way. Don't go that way. There are bands of broken men everywhere. So you get a real sense again in these chapters of the lie of the land. And then you get these rumors as well about the Lightning Lord. He can't die. And then you've got the Red Wizard with him, who's got these magic powers. And so you kind of get these half sort of, and then of course you get Jaime remembering, "Oh, I know who these people are. So I know the reality of who Thoros is. And, you're telling me that he's a Red Wizard that's got magic powers." But yeah, it's kind of the first time since Ned sent Dondarrion on this mission in the name of King Robert that we've heard of these broken bands of broken men, which and also Dondarrion and Thoros.
It is interesting that they mentioned the flux, because it's something that George can't really overlook in this world, because it's such a part of daily life. It would have been for this kind of like time period, and it will be a huge deal for Dany later on. Like, disease is a massive problem. And it's going to be a huge problem in times of war, when you've like dead bodies in rivers and all that kind of thing. It's like, even up to World War One, like it was a big problem when you had disease and war. So it still is, I guess, like now, is a disease and war. So it is something that that he will have to start building in to the story. I often wonder, how is it going to affect the story and affect Westeros in particular, because that will be a massive game changer if Dany brings disease to Westeros, especially, or more disease to Westeros. But I was like, I mean, I liked the stuff with the kneeling man. I think Cleos is just a pain in the arse. Just go away already. I'm loving the banter between Brienne and Jaime and how clever they are in reading a situation and all that kind of thing. But it's really, for me, this chapter is all about Jaime and, you know, thinking about why he became a Kingsguard and all the stuff with Aegon. But I don't want to jump into it without overlooking anything at the inn that you wanted to talk about.
Just wondering who the man and the boy were at the inn, and you know, or whether it's just one of those random things, just small folk who've taken over. You know, it could have just been, you know, at the right place at the right time kind of thing. Just thinking about the dynamics of the relationship between Jaime and Brienne, I think this is quite I think this is quite new for Jaime. All his life he's been around men and fighting men and warriors, and he's obviously got this obsessive this obsessive love affair with his sister. And I don't think that he's really ever in his entire life come across anybody like Brienne. And there is this kind of grudging respect for her. I don't think he's probably never felt about a wench the way that he thinks about Brienne. And I think it's disarming him a little bit. And I think that the fact that he's looking at, I think she's kind of like triggering him almost to go back and reflect on some, just because it's kind of like, wow, okay, you are making me question everything that I know about everything. So let me go back and think about some of those things and reflect on them and dream about them. And I think that's what she's doing for him.
Yeah, I think he loved knights, right? Like, he doesn't like the only, like, he was being offered Liza Tully, you know. I mean, the women didn't turn him on, like, apart from his sister. But
was he though? That's just made me think, is that something that Cersei just made up?
I don't know.
To kind of, because he was so terrified of that he was even
it would totally be a Tywin thing to do, though, to take both sides of Westeros. But she could have made him up. She could have been playing, like, it's a very Cersei thing to do as well, to play both sides.
Yeah, did she lie about those plans to marry Lysa?
Tywin did want to get his hands on Sweet Robin, so it's totally, you know, it's possible that he did want the Eyrie for himself. But
poor Lysa is just like such a horrendous prospect that he would gladly give up Casterly Rock to not, because that's at the time and his age and everything as well. But he sees it as, oh, I'm free from like having to marry Lysa, and it's like, yeah, but have you realized what you've just given up?
The only thing is, at the time, she wouldn't have been crazy. Like, she wouldn't have been the crazy Lysa Tully that she is now.
That's true. Yeah.
So I do think for Jaime, I think Jaime is in love with Cersei probably for the same reasons she's in love with him, because he reminds her of himself in a way. And I think Jaime doesn't strike me as somebody who would ever fall in love with a wallflower or somebody who was dainty. And I think he really respects strength, and that's what he falls in love with. So kind of the opposite to what Tyrion is attracted to in a woman.
Yeah.
He's very much, and you're right, he is attracted to Brienne here, but unlike Tyrion and Cersei, who have major daddy issues, Jaime has major mummy issues, because he had no problem with daddy. Daddy was totally on board with Jaime. Totally, but he's got some serious mummy issues that he's not facing up to. But he will I guess he will come with that later when he gets that vision. We'll get more of that. Ian is saying Jaime is an incestosexual. Yes. And AU says he talks about it at the table. Sorry, am I being stupid? What table?
talks about, I don't know. What do you mean, John?
Oh, Tywin talks about Lysa? Is that what you mean?
Oh, yeah. But Tywin had it planned. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's
missed
more,
that.
I think Tywin has been after the East.
Mm.
I mean, it's gotta be one of the majorly overlooked jewels in Westeros. The Eyrie being completely like just it's totally secure compared to anything else. So it would make sense that he would look for something like the Eyrie. Like he wants Harrenhal for the same kinds of reasons. Like it's a key military position to have. But yeah, so he says that he took the oath to be with Cersei and he gives up Casterly Rock so he doesn't have to have Lysa, and then they end up having to switch places because Tywin is so insulted by this. And he says that the cloak sullied him. And again, just coming off from where we started with Sansa hiding the Hound's cloak at the beginning. Again, another kind
and
of
Mance's
thread.
cloak
Yeah,
making
yeah.
him break his oath, and
Another kind of thread that we see through some of these chapters. Just that this it is kind of, it's one of those things that women have to put up with all the time. If you like, Lysa is sullied because she loses her virginity before she's married, and then John Arryn has to take her off. But actually, in reality, marriage actually sullies most of the women in this series because they're forced into these situations where they have to be with men they don't want to be with. Like Cersei. Cersei is sullied by the marriage to Robert. That's what kind of drives her bananas in the end. And Robert is so horrible to her. Ian calls it Cloakapalooza.
it is.
Yes, I like it. I like it. So it's interesting the way he talks about Aegon. Uh, he comes into the throne room, and Aegon has sent out word through the hand that
Ares.
or sorry, Ares. I wrote down Aegon. I'm so stupid. Anyway, Ares. Sorry, Ares. He comes into the throne room, and Ares' hands are bleeding, and he says Ares is always cutting himself on the throne, and nobody could be that clumsy, right? There has to be a reason why he's cutting himself. Like, is he being like? Does he have no control over his physical form sometimes, in like a Hodor-esque way? And that's something I meant to mention with Hodor in the Bran chapter. Hodor goes long periods of saying nothing. And it made me wonder, is he being warged by somebody else other than Bran at times?
Poor Hodor.
And it makes me wonder, is the same happening with Ares? Is there somebody constantly talking to Ares, or something has gone wrong with Ares
Well, there's
that he's grabbing hold of the throne
theory that time-traveling Bran is whispering in Ares' ear and saying the whole burn them all, and basically making him go crazy. And giving him like half visions and half, like us, like we're thrown as readers, we're thrown like half a bit of a vision and half a prophecy, and half, we make these theories, we craft them together based on these little crumbs that we get. Could have been the same for Ares. He could have had this voice in his head with these cryptic dreams and directions that just literally drove him insane.
It just seems so severe, and again, it's almost like it's a very kind of a Christian symbol, like the bleeding hands. It's almost there's something a bit strange, I think, about Ares' hands bleeding. And
blood and fire. It could be that he's some sort of weird ritual of self-harm somehow that he's got. Who knows? He was evil and cruel, but what could Jaime have done in this situation? We're reliving this as part of his memory, as part of him recalling this thing about why everyone calls him the Kingslayer, and he has this sneer all the time under his breath about nobody really knows what happened.
And we don't know in this chapter yet either that what Ares was planning.
I certainly think that Jaime had absolutely no intention of being on the throne or being or you know, taking the throne. And when he says proclaim who you like, I think he just doesn't really care. I don't know.
He thinks that it's going to be Aegon. That's why I wrote down Aegon. No, yeah, Aegon. He thinks it's going to be Aegon. That's going to be.
Again, Jaime has the choice. Bran had a choice. Mira and Jojen gave him a choice. There's, you know, Saladin gave Davos a choice. Here, Jaime remembers that he was given a choice. Does he go with a new Targaryen king, or does he go with Robert? And in the end, he thinks, well, it's not up to me to decide.
I also like the way he said that he had to kill the hand first because the hand was carrying Aerys's message, because the hand was a pyromancer.
Yeah,
and so he had to kill him first.
Yeah.
So before we know Aerys is saying burn them all, which we find out, we know that we can put two and two together, what the command was that he sent out. And he says nobody cared who killed the hand, like nobody talks about that.
Yes.
And that made me think it's so funny, because nobody in Westeros at this time is questioning who killed Robert, but everybody, all these wars, all this conflict has started because of who killed a hand. Like, it's completely opposite this time round.
And
it's just it's funny that kind of that again it's been flipped, you know, by the next generation, by Joffrey.
But he was, you know, and Iron Throne saying both Ned and Jaime declined and resisted the temptation, which kind of makes you think that there is honor here. You know, they're both sort of doing the honorable thing of like not jumping on the throne and taking it. They both either declined or resisted it. It wasn't in them at all to do that. So there is kind of honor there, but it's just, I mean, you read this and you think, okay, we're given another side of the coin here, which is, everyone's always like Kingslayer. You know, yes, he was a horrible, mad, evil, cruel king, but he was still the king. You know, and it's like, but actually the circumstances of that and how it happened, he was never going to kill his father. And he could see all these horrible things. I mean, he was raping his wife and everything. He was a horrible king. So in a way, you could say Jaime did the honorable thing here, but you've got Brienne in the background saying you were supposed to protect them, and it's a gift to be a knight, and that, you know, it's all she's ever wanted, really. And she's just exasperated at this character who seems to have just shit all over what it means to be a knight and what it means to take these oaths. But we can see as readers both sides of the coin here.
But also, we don't know what the oath is. Like, how do you, like, like we'll find out, like there's obviously conflict in the Kingsguard oath, and that's the reason why we haven't seen it, because there's the Night's Watch oath is very clear. Like, you're guarding the realms of men. It's very clear cut. You hold no allegiance to a king.
Well, the Knight's Oath is very contradictory in that you're supposed to. It basically, whether or not this is the oath or whether it's just parts of it, or somebody, you know, recounting what it means to them, but it's, you know, protect the weak, protect your king, especially if you're Kingsguard. You know, protect, and it's protect. But what happens if those two things come into conflict with each other? And this is what Jaime's asking. You know, what do you do in that situation? What would you have done? What would anybody have done in that situation? And now I'm left with this mantle of Kingslayer.
Like, how far does the oath go? I mean, does it go as far as throwing a 10-year-old boy out a window? You know, I mean, in that situation, how self-serving was that? Because Cersei can't get over it. Cersei doesn't understand why he did it. Like, why did you have to throw him out the window? Like, that Cersei would not have done that,
Mm.
and yet she can't believe Jaime did it. But then you have to think about also, like, Jaime kind of brings you through the process of how, you know, he doesn't want to name Aegon or you know, any of the other Targaryens because they all carry the same blood. They all have this potential for madness. So in an instant, he doesn't. He decides not to name anyone. He takes you through the thought process that a knight needs to go through very, very quickly. So when he throws Bran out of the window, that starts all of this way back in Game of Thrones. What was the thought process there? Is it like, okay, well, if I don't kill this kid, it's definite war. It's all out war. If I don't, you know what I mean? Like it's all out war between.
I think as much as Jaime has exactly the same feelings as most highborn boys do, which I guess is, you know, the idolizing of knights and being a knight, and I'm sure he faced exactly the same thing. But I believe that his predominant oath has always been to his sister, and that trumps any oaths that he would have taken as a knight, because that's the whole reason that he became a knight in the first place. It's just, I mean, just going back to that, the whole reason that Cersei is such a stupid cow. Oh, she's so annoying, and the fact that the whole thing backfires. You know, she engineers all this for him to be. She completely undermines Tywin as a child. You know, she's a child, and she completely undermines her father by manipulating Jaime into becoming Kingsguard, and then it just totally backfires because Tywin is so furious about this that he resigns and goes back to Castle Rock, and it's just like, wow, that's like, that couldn't have been any worse than, you know, yeah, she's an absolute nightmare.
It does make. Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say it's very interesting, the whole thing about the oaths and the mantle of Kingslayer, because Jaime's throwing that back at Brienne and saying, well, you know, we're both in the same club here, we're both Kingslayers, and she's like, how dare you, that's not how it happened, lies, and it's like, yeah, but at the same time, it's the same thing for him. He could be saying exactly the same thing back to her, but for some reason,
nobody takes his word for it.
Nobody believes him. And he even laughs and says, oh, wow, I should have used that excuse. I should have said a shadow crept in and killed the king, and like, ha ha ha. And she's furious. Brienne just can't, you know, she's beside herself with fury at this concept that, you know, anybody could think that she was a Kingslayer.
But but Jaime doesn't seem to have any. He seems to be completely clueless when it comes to Cersei. Like, obviously, we know she's been sleeping with somebody else and all that kind of thing. But for her, like, Rhaegar was the goal. Like, that doesn't seem to have registered with him. And it makes me wonder, does he almost try and live up to being her Rhaegar on a subconscious level?
Well, he's a bit obsessed with Rhaegar himself, isn't he?
He is, yeah.
He's like this kind of, you know, he I'd say he definitely tries to compare himself. I mean, it's funny because if that marriage alliance had have gone ahead, she would have dropped Jaime like a brick, you know.
And this is the thing, though. I mean, I think, like, obviously they've grown apart now where we are at this stage after the first 5 books. But I feel like when he throws Bran out the window, Cersei's like, whoa.
Yeah.
I think that's already the beginning of the end for them. Because she is like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, that's like, that's way outside of what I wouldn't have asked you to do that. Like, I don't know why you did that.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really give a good answer as to why he does that.
And also, she's not in control of that situation, and she's been in control pretty much, but certainly manipulated conditions that makes her feel as though she's in control.
But he's allowed himself to be so sullied by this cloak that he's lost. He seems, at that stage at the beginning of Game of Thrones, he seems to have lost the ability to empathize with anyone.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what being a good person made me do. It made me save everybody, and now I'm a Kingslayer.
Yeah. So what's the point?
What's the point?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to just briefly ask you was about Tywin, and when he takes Cersei back to Casterly Rock, how much of Robert's rebellion is Tywin being an opportunist, and how much of it does he spark? And I don't know. I meant to go and look at a timeline for this, for when Rhaegar gets this prophecy. I just wonder, like, because we've talked a lot about the Illuminati and stuff like that before. Like Tywin, there's no way Tywin was going to let that lie that his only heir was taken from him. There's no way he was going to let Aerys
well,
there
was a growing resentment over the years, wasn't there, between Aerys and Tywin? I think
Jon Arryn gets to get Lysa, and gets a leg into the Tullys and a leg into the Eyrie and all that.
I think it was always there. I think any opportunity to kind of trigger that, and this was it. I don't think Tywin planned it. Never in a million years would he. But that's the last thing that Tywin would have wanted, is Jaime to give up Casterly Rock and become Kingsguard. That's just ruined his entire plans for what the future of the House Lannister. But
I was talking a load of shite earlier on. Tywin can't have the Eyrie if he marries Jaime to Lysa. What was I talking about? Why would Tywin marry Jaime to Lysa? He doesn't get anything out of that match. Surely Tywin would look for a way more advantageous match than that. That doesn't really, like, the second born daughter to Riverrun, that doesn't really give him much, does it?
No, because she didn't have the Eyrie then, did she?
No, I was thinking completely wrong. I always associate her with just the Eyrie, but of course, she would have been Riverrun. So why would Tywin have even said that?
I mean, if anything, what he should have done would have been marrying Cersei to oh God,
Edmure.
Yeah.
But obviously Cersei was so beautiful that he could have got Rhaegar. That was what he was thinking. But then when that doesn't happen.
But if you wanted to secure the Riverlands, so you've got the east and the west.
But would the Freys not be a better? Because you've got the crossing then. I don't know. Why not marry Jaime to Lyanna?
Yeah.
Why not get the north?
Yeah, that was a really shitty alliance, actually, Lysa.
It makes me wonder, is there... I know he doesn't need... Yeah, AU said he's the heir to Casterly Rock, so he doesn't need anything. It just makes me wonder...
Well, apart from he needs children to continue the Lannister line.
What's the connection there with Hoster Tully? Like, we've talked about Hoster Tully, we talked about him last week as being... like, such a huge power player but when we meet him, he's absent-minded and weak, and he must have been quite a formidable force. He obviously had a lot of men at his disposal. That he obviously gets a Stark and Arryn alliance for both of his kids. But yeah, it's I mean, definitely an Arryn alliance is better than a Lannister one, I guess, from Hoster's point of view.
Yeah.
So maybe Lysa would have been a good match for Jaime. But yeah, it makes me wonder why he doesn't try and get Lyanna for Jaime. That might have been a good match, actually. He might have actually really liked Lyanna, Jaime.
Yeah.
Lyanna was Hoster and Tywin fought together. Sorry. Yeah. Lyanna was... Oh, Hoster and Tywin fought together. Yeah. Yeah, I get. No, it's just yeah, just
It's a strange one.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it makes me wonder how much does Tywin help encourage the rebellion from a distance or in covert ways, you know.
Just because he's so pissed off with Aerys that he's like, right, here's the opportunity, let's just go with it.
Yeah. Memo to self, Google Jaime and Lyanna fanfic. Yeah. Sorry, Lyanna was too young. All right, okay. Was Cersei too young for Rhaegar? Or are they around the same age? It must have been, I suppose.
I don't know. I mean, a marriage alliance is.
Then Lyanna was way too young for Rhaegar, if that's the case.
Yeah, but I mean, they marry babies and all sorts of things.
Yeah, I don't think Lyanna would have been too young for Jaime. She's not. If she's okay for Rhaegar, she's all right for Jaime.
There's a very quick dream that Jaime has at the end of this chapter where he dreams that the dead are swirling in green flames. Then this is just before Brienne wakes him up to take the watch. He's haunted by this. It not only does it define him as Kingslayer, but it's something that haunts his nightly dreams by the sound of it. It's something that he personally just cannot get away from. I mean, all of this chapter sets up Jaime quite nicely for a potential redemption arc. Absolutely. But the dead swirling in green flames.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just that, like, he also had to see the Starks be burnt, or the Rickon be burnt in the throne room. I mean, it's not the honor he was thinking of when especially when you have someone like Rhaegar, and AU says Rhaegar was 23 and Lyanna was 14. Okay, gross. But it's not the honor that it's not it's not what he's expecting when he becomes a Kingsguard, right? That isn't like the legends, you know.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, so Ian says Chris Hansen to the Tower of Joy. So yeah, that's it for the Jaime chapter.
Yeah.
So it kind of brings up more questions. There's still stuff that's kind of unresolved from that chapter, I feel, going into Winds.
Well, it comes up. There's more to this that it comes up later on when he has another dream that's much more prolific. When he rests his head and falls asleep against a weirwood stump. So I'm sure we'll be able to kind of patch the two together. But next week we've got 2 Arya chapters.
Yay!
And we've got a cat chapter, which we haven't had for a while. In fact, I think I quite enjoyed this group of chapters this week because there wasn't a cat chapter. Yeah. I always go, oh, when I see a cat chapter, but
all right, Claire, she'll be dead soon enough. Give them a break.
No, let her have a few chapters before she gets her throat slit.
She has a lot of chapters in this. I'm afraid you're going to have a lot of cat chapters. I think her and Jaime have the most, or her and Tyrion or something have the most. She does have a lot. We've Tyrion 2, more moaning at the beginning of next week, no doubt. And so it's Tyrion 2 to Arya 3, chapter 12 to 17. Yeah. Same time next week.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you so much to everybody who joined us. And as usual, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. It's a bank holiday here tomorrow, so I will spend the day setting up live stream stuff and playlists and all that, so it'll make it all more user friendly. So I have time tomorrow to do that in between the housework. So I hope you all have a great week. Thanks a million, Claire, and talk to you all again soon. Bye.
Oh.